Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County government, politics, business, education, just about anything that grabs our attention. I'm Scott Barker, the editor of Compass, a subscription-based website and newsletter that covers all those topics. You can find us at CompassKnox.com. We are recording Compass Points at the opulent studios of Barbarian Productions in Rocky Hill. Producer is Lord Seth Barber. Seth.
Hello. I'm doing great. It's not super cold finally. We survived these single-digit nights this week. It was quite a spell we had here for Knoxville general weather. But all things are good. No busted pipes. None of the side effects in the studio here from the super cold.
Oh, that's good. That's good. No burst pipes. No anything like that. So, it's mellowed out just a touch. It's still pretty chilly, but
we started the day.
But it is winter.
Right. We started the day today at freezing instead of finishing the day at freezing like we've been doing.
That's true. Well, we have quite a bit of stuff to cover today. The first batch of features we'll be looking at. We had a feature story on Steve Maticcio. He is the executive director at the Knoxville Museum of Art. He's been there on the job just about a year, and we caught up with him to see what was going on with him. We also have we'll also be talking about the city's decision to expand the co-responder program, which we will detail. We've talked about it before, but we'll detail it in the discussion about it. But first, we're going to start off with a county commission and their approval of the first residential infrastructure development district in Knox County. And what that is that's a new way to pay for road improvements, sewer and water improvements, those kinds of things that are caused by new development. That's has been one of the sticking points whenever new subdivisions go out in the county, especially the impact on roads. Who pays for adding a turn lane and those kinds of things in these areas. And this is a new state law that went into effect this year that allows for the creation of these infrastructure improvement districts. And what the deal is the developer can request the county to establish, or a city, anybody, whatever jurisdiction they're in, they can request the creation of one of these districts. And generally speaking, the district is the subdivision that is being built. Has to be residential, primarily residential, but the subdivision that is being going to be built, and the residents who buy houses and live in that subdivision will pay an extra assessment on top of their property taxes to pay for these road improvements and such. And Knox County Commission had a public hearing last week to look at the first one. The first one is proposed by D.R. Horton Incorporated. They're a major home builder, and they have a proposal for a subdivision, large subdivision down. It's over 340 lots down in South Knox County at 2814 Tipton Station Road. They want to develop the district so that they can pay for primarily road improvements. There's sewer, and there's $6.5 million of improvements. There's sewer and water upgrades that'll be required to develop that many houses down there. Also, a turn lane from Maryville Pike onto Tipton Station Road. That's to the west of the development. To the east, at the intersection of Martin Mill Pike and Tipton Station Road, they're going to put in a roundabout, and they would. The way that this works is the Industrial Development Board of Knox County issues bonds to pay for these improvements. The county oversees construction, and the people who buy lots in the subdivision will end up paying those assessments. Those assessments will go to pay the bond issue. So the idea is that the people who most directly benefit from these improvements pay the bill, and the rest of us in Knox County do not. Although any of us can drive on Tipton Station Road. That's kind of a thing that kind of gets lost in this. It's a public road. Anybody can drive on it, but the people that pay for it are only the people that live in the subdivision that kind of prompted the need for improvements there. There was quite a bit of discussion about this. This property has been, this proposal has been kind of controversial from the beginning. First of all, it's a large residential development in a kind of a rural, semi-rural area of South Knox County that's seen a lot of development activity recently. This is just south of Governor John Sevier Highway, near Bonnie Cade Elementary School. It's been traditionally very rural out there, but a lot of big subdivisions are coming in now, and townhome developments and those types of things. It's on about 155 acres. It used to be owned by a Atlas Powder Company, and they stored TNT on that property, which has been noted by area residents who are against the development of this property. It's forced them to go get environmental assessments. Then you had Andy Fox was elected to represent South Knox County, and immediately after taking office, he tried to reverse the zoning so that they couldn't build a subdivision on this property. That got shot down, but he attempted it, and it's been a kind of a crazy process for Horton, and they had gotten through this so far, and they had their zoning done, as I said, concept and development plans approved, and now they wanted this a way to pay for those infrastructure improvements. The county commissioners were asked a lot of questions, went into details about the need for these improvements. There was one resident who lives right where the roundabout's going to be going in. He didn't like the fact that there was a roundabout going to go in his front yard. But ultimately, there were questions about the financing. Ultimately, they passed it 10-1 because even Fox, he said basically, I was against it at first, and now I think that that's I lost that battle, so I might as well going to go ahead and vote to approve this. One thing was they didn't get it just rubber stamped. There were conditions put on the development. Kim Frazier, who represents Hardin Valley, but was a founding member of the Knox County Planning Alliance. It's an advocacy group for responsible growth in the county. That's kind of how she got into the political realm. She suggested, and her colleagues agreed to place conditions on their approval of this. One was that the commission had to adopt a policy about how to go about with the residential infrastructure development districts. They had to go ahead and hear this one because of state, it's state law. You got to follow state law, and but they're developing their own policy. They're actually going to be considering that policy at next Monday's meeting. I'll talk about that in a minute. Then it's also contingent on the successful acquisition of land for the improvements that are going to go in. They're asking for quarterly progress reports, and plus the final environmental clearance on that. The property had done an environmental study. The Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation said, no, you need a more intensive study because we don't know if TNT was just stored there or produced there. If it was produced there, you got other problems. And they're waiting on the final phase 2 report. The officials at D.R. Horton said, we've been told it's good, but we just don't have it in hand yet. But so once that is in hand and it's clear, if it's clear, then commission's approval would go into effect along with the other contingencies that they had. Pretty much they're going to be ready to start moving forward with a more detailed design. It's going to be a long time before anything gets built down there anyway, but it's kind of and said it's an interesting piece of property. The front half of the property is where all the houses are going to go. Stock Creek bisects the property, and then behind Stock Creek there's about 70 acres that slopes up from Stock Creek to Rambo Mountain, the top of Rambo Mountain, and they are not going to develop that. That's going to be set aside, be covered under a conservation easement and protected from development in the future. So the project was approved, does move forward. It's going to be kind of the guinea pig of this residential infrastructure development district process, and I think a lot of developers are keeping an eye on that. The whole idea there is that while in a sense they're paying for these improvements, they're ultimately the homeowners are going to pay for them through this special assessment. And of course, they're going to have to notify people up front that, hey, yeah, you're going to be paying your property taxes, but you're going to be paying up to $1,000. I think it would be about $1,000 per home, and that's going to be the limit under the county policy anyway. But an extra $1,000 a year to pay for this infrastructure for the next 20 years or so, however long the bond issue is good for. And I'm sure that a lot of developers will be wanting to watch that and see, if it's better to do it that way or better to pay for this up front and just bake that into the cost of the homes, because that's the other way to do it. Obviously the homeowners always pay. I mean, that's kind of the they pay for the developer's cost, and that could either be baked into the price of the house or through this special assessment. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of developers who are going to be paying attention to see how that's received, how if that affects homes, because that will allow D.R. Horton to list those houses, or whoever lists them, under a little bit lower than they would if D.R. Horton paid up front for the improvements. So that will be interesting for us to watch as well. Like I said, it'll be quite some time though before any houses are complete and are go up on the market. And in the meantime, we'll pay attention to these development districts and what happens with them. And that was one big thing on Wednesday. Tuesday of last week, City Council had another one of their contentious meetings. It's almost become a routine at City Council for members of the public who go there to yell and clap and curse and do all kinds of stuff to in the middle of the proceedings. It was a little bit less raucous this time than it was 2 weeks previously. Primarily because Mayor India Kincannon tossed out one of the people making yelling and interrupting the meeting, tossed them out pretty quickly, and then threatened to toss out others. And it was that I think that may have had an effect. I don't know, but it wasn't quite as loud and disruptive as it had been in previous weeks. Anyway, the reason that there were so many people there and upset was the Knoxville Police Department wanted to increase the contract with the McNabb Center for its co-responder program. And the co-responder program, we've talked about it on the podcast before. The co-responder program, co-response program, is it started out as a kind of a pilot program in 2021, I believe, and they deploy a team of consisting of a police officer and a mental health professional from the McNabb Center to respond to calls involving people going through mental health crises, nonviolent in nature. They will send out the co-response team. They go and while there is an officer there, the theory goes, while there is an officer there to make sure the scene is safe, there is also the mental health professional to help determine what needs to be done to diffuse the situation, to find out what kind of services that person might need. The KPD wanted actually a little bit more than double the contract with the McNabb Center to over $800,000 a year, which would enable McNabb Center to do two things. One is to pretty substantially increase the pay for the social workers involved, the social work professionals who are involved in the program. They have said, and they said repeated it on last Tuesday, that it's really difficult to get people to do that kind of work. It's not for everybody. It's not for every social worker, and because you go live to a scene where there is an ongoing crisis, so they had to felt they had to dramatically increase the pay, and did, and it enables that to happen. It also enables the McNabb Center to provide additional mental health professionals to the program so that they can increase the number of teams in the field from 4 to 6, and that would allow KPD to essentially have a 24/7 presence or close to a 24/7 presence in the field for these units. And to support this, KPD, has put out, that they have responded more than 4,000 calls since the inception of the program. The vast majority of the calls end up with either someone being transported to a mental health facility, or getting a referral to mental health services. Only I think there have been 26 arrests out of the more than 4,000 calls. Only 26 people have been arrested, and absolutely zero. This was the statistic they really like to tout. Zero incidents have involved the use of force on the part of the police officer. So they touted that. They then were greeted by opponents who there is we've talked about this in the past. There is a proposal to create an alternative response program, and an alternative response program, instead of pairing an officer with a mental health worker, they pair an EMT with a mental health worker, which takes the police presence completely away. And the theory behind that is that reduces the likelihood of an escalation of these situations, because there is no police officer there. A lot of cities use this. A lot of cities use co-response. A lot of cities use alternative response. The city and the county agreed to look at alternative response and created a task force to see what it would take to create that, because it would essentially create a new emergency response service. And get into the details of that in a minute, but this task force would be looking into whether to establish this, how to establish this, how to pay for it, those kinds of things. And that task force was created last year about this time. It was last winter. I believe it was February. And they've only met once, and that was just a couple of weeks ago. So it's real slow moving. The opponents or the proponents of alternative response objected to expanding co-response because they said that's premature. We're working on alternative response. We don't need to address that. There were some council members who were saying, "Hey, we can do both." It's not, they're not mutually exclusive. So they did, and the council did end up passing the expansion, the additional expenditure involved in that. And that's the cost is one of these things that gets brought up a lot. Right now, one of the, if you're just looking at dollars and cents, the alternative or the co-response model kind of makes sense, because you've already got police officers on the payroll. They already have vehicles they can use. The dispatching protocol is the same. You've got dispatchers who dispatch KPD officers. They can dispatch the alternative response team. So that's that's all kind of easy to do. Alternative response would require an organization, probably a nonprofit, to run the program. They would have to be dispatched differently. They would have to be funded some way. They'd have to buy vehicles. They'd have to hire EMTs. They'd have to, there's just a lot of expense involved, at least on the front end. Proponents will say in the long run, it will save money, but that's a long way down the road. Like I said, the task force has only met once, and we will see that. One of the interesting things is, KPD can pay for the city can pay for the expanded contract, which is going from a little over 300,000 to a little over 800,000. But KPD also wanted to apply for a grant to get some of the state opioid abatement money, from the opioid lawsuit settlements. They wanted over $1 million in that money. Almost $2 million, $1.75 million, and in order to apply for a grant, what these city agencies do, city departments will do, city in the administration, they go to city council, they ask for permission to apply for a grant and to accept it. That way, it only has to come to council once. They don't have to get separate approval to accept the money. They get that up front. But they wanted to get this money, and that would help pay for the expansion of the program. The contract with McNabb. There are other things that they can use. If they do want to buy vehicles, they can use this grant to buy vehicles. There's there are other costs associated with the program. So one of the things is these officers, the officers involved in the program are trained in crisis intervention. They're not just any old patrol officer. They are trained in crisis intervention so that they can work with the mental health professional. So they wanted to do that, but then questions came up because there were no details that KPD provided council about what they were going to do with the money. There was, and that really bothered quite a few council members, even those who support the co-response program. Kind of said, hey, we need to know more about what you're going to use these funds to do exactly, and that was not included in any of the materials that they KPD provided the council. So council delayed that. They're not going to consider that until their meeting, which will be next week. So that KPD can gather that information and provide it to them about what exactly they're going to use that grant money for. So the upshot of all this is the co-response program that KPD runs with the officer and mental health professional will expand. They will. It's a 1-year contract with 2 1-year extensions possible, so that if things change, the city and can walk away from the program. And that's basically going to go ahead and take effect. So the KPD hopes that will enable the rest of their officers to respond to violent crimes and property crimes and those kind of more traditional law enforcement activities. Meanwhile, the Alternative Response Task Force will still be meeting and looking into how to actually, if it's feasible and, what would be feasible for that type of response. So, like so many things in government, these stories evolve. They don't end. They just keep evolving, and that's one of the cases here.
That's how we get to keep working.
That is how we get to keep working. Yes, if news just ended, then I'd be out of a job at the end of a story, and I don't want that to happen. The one thing we did, I mentioned the first of the episode that that we cover things that just strike our fancy. One of the things that struck our fancy last week was checking in with Stephen Maticcio. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because I did not do this story. Our correspondent Matthew Everett talked to Maticcio, And if you don't know the name, he is the executive director of the Knoxville Museum of Art. He's been on the job for about a year. He took over from the longtime executive director there, David Butler, who retired. And so Everett talked to Maurizio just kind of about, what his vision for the museum was and what his impressions were so far. Maurizio is he's a native of Canada. He's worked at museums and galleries all across North America, mostly in the East, but in all across North America. And he told Everett that he's impressed by the museum. One of the things that Butler did during his leadership of the museum was he did put an emphasis on kind of East Tennessee art. They have invested heavily on buying artworks or some of the paintings of Buford Delaney, who was a African American artist who's internationally famous. He was a groundbreaking artist of the 20th century, and the museum has the largest collection of his works that are held by a public museum now. They have exhibits that are East Tennessee centric and that sort of thing. And Maurizio said yes, that's great, and he wants to continue doing that, but also he doesn't want the KMA to be a merely provincial museum, but one that exhibits art that places that East Tennessee art in the greater context of the art world. So he wants to. He doesn't want to replace Butler's vision. Wants to extend it. Anyway, for those of you who enjoy art, KMA is a great place to go. Check out their exhibits if you haven't been in a while. They've got new exhibits in. So you can see for yourself what Maurizio is doing at the museum. It is free. So anyway, those were kind of some of the feature length stories that we did over the course of last week. Now we also and this is one of the things that people sometimes who we talk to about Compass might not realize, but Compass is more than just a website. We have a daily, at least weekdays, we send out a newsletter that our subscribers get. The newsletter isn't just a typical journalism newsletter that just links to other news sources. What we do is we write brief summaries of some of the other things that are going on in the community. So there are 5 or 6 things to learn about. You get it in your inbox every weekday morning at 6:00, and you can check that out and have a good idea of what's going on in the community, at least in the political government education end of things.
You'll be the smartest guy at the water cooler. That's really
yes,
or at least the most current, recently informed local guy at the water cooler when you get to the office.
I think you would be, and we are told by our subscribers that they are, and that that is the where the real value is in subscribing. And
personally, I often feel like especially with the newsletter, that I feel like I'm having to go back and explain how parts and pieces of stuff work to make the story make sense to people, because they don't. Yeah. So many people around don't follow the news, especially the local side of stuff, that much, and so the hard part is having to remember all the context for people when you're explaining the stories for them.
Well, that's what Compass is for.
Exactly,
to provide that. But anyway, some of the wanted to go through real quickly some of the items that we had in the newsletter last week, the types of things that you would be able to expect to get in the the emails if you're a subscriber. One was the Knoxville Chamber is going to be moving its offices. For last 2 decades, they've had an office on the second floor of 17 Market Square. They own that property. They have decided to move. They haven't got a new location yet, but they're going to put the that unit. It's basically kind of like a condo unit. They own the second floor of the building. The first floor, where the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center is not. They don't own, but they do own the second floor, and they're going to put it up for sale. And Mike Odom, who's the CEO of the chamber, said that they're going to they'll be looking. That it was basically the board felt that, or a board task force was looking at this, felt that it would be better aligned for their mission to find another space. I didn't say how it better aligns to go to another space, but they're going to be looking for another space somewhere, probably in Knox County. They like to position themselves as a regional resource, but obviously most of their members, they like to call their members investors, but most of their members are in Knoxville and Knox County. They don't know yet whether they're going to buy a building, lease a building, at least a portion of the building. The moving part, they've decided to move. They've decided to put their current digs up for sale, but they haven't found a location yet. But that will open up some space on Market Square. But it is kind of a significant event because the chamber moved into Market Square about the time that Market Square was starting to revive, and they've been there for a long time. It was kind of a symbolically, at least, it was a sign of commitment from the business community to the revitalization of downtown. But 20 years later, no one can argue that the revitalization of downtown has been pretty successful. And while there are still places where you can, there are older buildings that can be rehabbed. There are places where new construction can go in, but downtown is a much more lively place, and probably the symbolic benefit of having the chamber down there has probably dwindled a little bit. But anyway, we talk about that. The City of Knoxville's Procedures and Charter Task Force met last week. We talked about them a lot last week in the episode, got way into the weeds. Kind of want to apologize almost for getting as far in the weeds as we got. All I'm going to say here is they met and decided they're going to be tackling the council rules first, and then move on to ways to routinely review and possibly propose changes to the Knoxville City Charter. It's going to be over the next 9 months. They're going to meet monthly. We'll update you later. Also, last week, 6 Knoxville firefighters filed a lawsuit in federal court against the city, claiming that they were misclassified in the city's relatively new pay system, and that they are owed back pay. The officer or the firefighters are all veterans with 20 years experience or more. One thing that they are arguing is that they're not arguing that the city's pay system is unfair. In the city's pay system, basically there are 10 different firefighter jobs you can have. Each of those has 25 steps, basically aligning with the 25 years you're expected to work. And so if you have 10 years of experience in your job, then you're in step 10, and so on and so forth. These firefighters, and all of whom are veterans, the youngest is 49. They're alleging that they were misclassified. They were classified lower than they should have been, and that that's cost them money. And that money, because it's a step program, they would be underpaid in their view up until they retire. So they're not saying that the structure, the pay structure, which the city just adopted 2 years ago, is unfair. What they're saying is they were unfairly characterized or categorized in determining their pay. Anyway, they have filed a lawsuit. The city did send out a kind of a response to it, not to the lawsuit directly. They kind of defended the pay structure, which the lawsuit doesn't say that the structure is unfair. It was how the structure was implemented, or how it was for these particular employees. Anyway, they filed that lawsuit in federal court, and of course that'll take a while to work itself out. Another thing that happened last week is that Young Williams Animal Center is pitching in the California wildfire disaster that has been going on in and around Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, the animal shelters are overwhelmed. Some were destroyed. Some, a lot of animals got displaced. Went to shelters in the Los Angeles area. The other shelters, they're overwhelmed with all this new influx of animals, these pets. A lot of them, I don't know all the situation on the ground. The Humane Society's out there working to rescue some, but there is an interstate effort to relocate some of the animals that don't have homes anymore, some of the pets, and Young Williams has agreed to accept 60 dogs from Southern California. They're on their, they may even already be here, but in order to accept those 60 dogs, they were sent out word asking people to become fosters for animals who are currently at Young Williams. So they it's not obviously being a foster dog companion. You don't it's not a long-term commitment. Young Williams said that they would help help pay for the upkeep of these animals if you cared to foster. You can check with the status of that. They put out the call in the middle of the week. I don't know, haven't checked back to see what the status is. But then there are also going to be 60 other animals coming in from California. There are foster options. There's also the option to adopt animals, and it's a different process. But you can check with Young Williams if you're interested. But that's a kind of an private sector interstate response to a really tragic disaster that's going on right now. And like I said, you could get information like that, in our newsletter, in your inbox every weekday morning. And you can go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe. You don't have to do anything extra to get the newsletter. It just comes with your subscription. So, moving on, we've got a busy week this week. As the big thing that's going on is actually going on in Nashville. The legislature is holding a special session that Governor Bill Lee has called special session was focusing on 3 topics. One, first and foremost, is Lee's school voucher proposal. We've talked about it plenty of times. It wants to expand there's a pilot program in 3 counties now, wants to expand that statewide. It would provide 20,000 scholarships of $7,075 each to families so they can send their kids to private schools.
I'm going to sneak in a shameless plug. I've got in my podcast, Almost an Agreement, that is taping later on today, that's actually going to release yesterday to you guys listening. I've got Jennifer Owens coming in, and we're going to go through the actual language of the bill and break it down as best we can to really get an understanding of what legally is happening versus what will functionally happen over time. We'll conjecture on some of the more like what we think is going to happen as a result of. But at the end of the day, we're going to break down what is on paper, what they're voting on, and how that's going to work. And so if you want to check that out, you can check that out at Almost an Agreement podcast.
Not shameless plug.
I introed it as shameless. I am shameless.
Well, and I highly recommend that. The one of the scholarship program, voucher program, however you want to refer to it. Like I said, it starts out 20,000. They're going to add 5,000 a year for the foreseeable future. It's they've got some other things in the proposal. They're going to hold. This is using basically gambling money that comes into the state. It's be over $400 million, and it's a separate pool of money from the formula that funds the public schools. That was the governor has really emphasized that because one of the fears is that among many public school supporters is that it will harm public schools because funding is ultimately tied to enrollment. This also they also try to sweeten the pot by offering teachers $2,000 bonuses for a one-time $2,000 bonus in pay this year. There's money that's going to be set aside for building construction and maintenance. So there were a lot of perks thrown in. This was Lee tried to get a similar bill passed last year. So those perks were not in it. The Republicans in the House came up with an alternative proposal. Those in the Senate came up with another alternative proposal. Nobody could make anything reconcile that they could even vote on. So it died. One of the primary group in opposition in the legislature, there were 2. All the Democrats, the Democrats are pretty uniformly against school vouchers, but also the rural legislators who are concerned about the impact on their school systems. There's this concern that there will be pop-up academies that will people that will try to operate schools, create schools, operate them, and use that funding to pay for their school. But that's the aspect of this special session that gets the most attention. There are 2 other topics that are going to be covered as well. One is increased funding for disaster relief, primarily for Hurricane Helene. Be about $460 million. The funds would create one. Well, the money would create one new disaster relief fund, augment an existing disaster relief program, and this would all go toward rebuilding the areas of northeast Tennessee that were the hardest hit by Hurricane Helene last September. another thing that's going to be part of this is in Carter County, Hampton High School was pretty much destroyed. They're going to appropriate $40 million for its rebuilding. That part of this is not controversial. Thing just about. I would be shocked if there's a single no vote on anything to do with the Helene disaster relief. But as written now, who knows? It could, all of these proposals can have amendments thrown onto them and could change in form. But that has pretty universal support. Then there is the kind of newest thing is on immigration enforcement with the Donald Trump's administration coming into power there, and he's made all these changes to immigration law. The governor wants to create a new division within the Department of Safety to do nothing but coordinate with the Immigration Customs Enforcement and other agencies involved in immigration enforcement, law enforcement, to help them in any way possible. That would also include the use of the National Guard. He's already said that. It would also make it a crime for public officials to follow or establish or continue to follow sanctuary city, quote unquote, policies. Would basically make it very difficult for cities and counties to avoid working with the federal government on that. They'd also get incentives. They're going to give incentives to join to participate in the 287G program, for instance, which law enforcement works closely. That's a formal agreement where law enforcement people are officers are essentially deputized to be ICE agents in helping to move into the deportation process people who are here without proper documents and have committed crimes. So that is that's coming up. This is
I got a quick question on the special session because I've heard some different conversations. There's 5-6 individual bills that's going through as part of it.
There's several individual bills. I didn't count the individual bills but it's on these three topics. So,
right, correct. So, but it's not all or nothing.
No.
1, 3, and 7, 1, 3, and 6 could pass, and 2 and 4,
Absolutely.
5 can go aside. Because I've heard a lot of chatter about people kind of saying, "Well, it's messed up that Lee's tying hurricane relief to the voucher bill, and that like forcing legislators to say yes because they want the hurricane relief, not because they want the other."
Well,
I mean, certainly
although technically, yes. These
it's certainly implied with the session.
Technically, yes. Hurricane relief has nothing to do with vouchers, but the very fact that all three are subjects of the special session, politically, it's going to be. They're going to use that as leverage.
Right. The goal is for it to be all pass.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's not obligated in the special session that they all pass or none pass.
That is correct.
Okay.
It's Well, you have special sessions because you don't know if anything's going to pass or not. But I think it's probably a given that the disaster relief stuff will pass easily. Could be without any changes whatsoever. It could just breeze on through. The voucher proposals, though, could that's a proposal. It could be amended, changed in many ways, in order to get the support of those rural legislators who are the keys to passage of that. and the same goes for the immigration proposal. Although that's one of those things that's really difficult to do on the fly. And one of the reasons is, and one of the reasons this is kind of a controversial thing that they're doing is that immigration law is federal. It's, states really can't control immigration law. That is a federal function because it has to do with United States citizenship and the United States border, not the border between Tennessee and Kentucky, the border between or any ports of entry as well, not just borders. I mean, your point of entry. LaGuardia Airport in New York is a border, if you want to look at it that way. But it's federal law, and traditionally state governments have not had a role. Obviously, the Trump administration is going to do everything they can to get the states to help with the enforcement, and they're doing quite a few things. But again, there could it's difficult because of that interaction about how bills would have to be worded and how amendments would have to be worded.
Which part of what budget it comes out of? Who's paying for what?
But all that can change.
Right.
All in all three of these, I've said disaster relief could pass without amendments, but you could. They could double the amount of money they want to spend. They could create. The legislature can create. Can reallocate the money in between. They've got $40 million set aside for Hampton High School. Well, the folks in Carter County might say, "Hey, $40 million might get us a building, but to really have a good high school,
to replace this,
to really replace it, plan for growth, have a nice football stadium, whatever it is." We need $50 million, and so they could. And
of course, people. I know Andy Fox isn't a state legislator, but just for the reference of, we have people like Andy Fox who want to refuse federal money for any reason. I'm sure we have a few of those floating around in the state house.
Well, this for the disaster relief stuff. That's state money.
Oh, okay.
This is all state money that they're wanting to appropriate there. No. Well, that's why we have the show, so people can. And there may be listeners who are thinking the exact same thing. No, this is state funding here,
right?
It could. In fact, one of the things that the state funding would go for would help any matching that the counties have had to put up for federal relief.
Yeah.
So it's
okay.
There's a lot of the details, but anyway, the special session starts Monday. And so we'll be following it. Of course, we're primarily a Knoxville, probably Knoxville focused, but things that happen in Nashville do have a huge impact on us. We're probably not going to be able to send anybody to Nashville to cover that because we still have plenty of stuff to cover here. But we'll definitely be keeping an eye on them, and we'll report the important developments, in the coming week. Other things that are going on. County Commission is meeting. They're holding their voting meeting at 5:00 on Monday at the small assembly room in the City County building. The I mentioned before that infrastructure, residential infrastructure development district, the policy that developers will have to follow in the future is going to be up for a vote, and so. And discussion there. Also, the official memorandum of understanding with D.R. Horton Incorporated about their development in South Knox County. There will be plenty of other things on the agenda that we'll be following and could bubble up and turn into bigger news items. We're also going to be looking at, on Tuesday at 9 a.m., the Sports Authority will be meeting. They'll be talking about the baseball, soccer, multi-use stadium that is going up in the old city. It is about 90% complete. They'll be getting a construction update on it and some updates on other things, one of them including an audit of kind of how they've been spending the money. That'll all happen at the Sports Authority meeting. It'll be 9:00 Tuesday at the KCDC headquarters, 901 North Broadway in North Knoxville. This will be kind of one of the bigger, they're getting down to the wire. First pitch is April 15th for the Knoxville Smokies, so they're finishing up touches. They've got the lights are up. They've been testing those. You can see them at night with the lights on. The field is installed. They're really getting down close to the putting on final touches, and there may be more announcements of other things that are going on with the park in the next few weeks. Finally, also on Tuesday at 6:00 at the Public Works Service Center on Morris Avenue. That's the city's Public Works Service Center. The city's holding a public meeting on the 5-year consolidated plan, which is required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development for how you're going to be developing and using federal affordable housing funds over the coming years. So they're required to have these meetings to help develop the plan that they're going to use on spending that federal housing money. And if you are concerned about how the city spends its federal housing money, that is the place to go to have your to first of all learn about it. Second of all, have your concerns heard. Don't know if they'll make a difference, but you can at least register them. So, like I said, that'll be 6:00 Tuesday at the Public Works Service Center. There will be other news, I am sure, that pops up that we will be on top of and we will be covering. And we hope that you will, if you don't already subscribe, you'll go ahead and join us. Once again, it's CompassKnox.com. And that's it for this week's Compass Points. I want to thank Will Wright for providing music for us, and Lord Seth Barber for his intrepid engineering work and his insightful questions and comments during the course of the show. Thanks, Seth. And we will, as we mentioned earlier, make sure if you're interested in the voucher issue, check out Almost in Agreement, his podcast. But for Compass Points, that's it this week. We will see you next week and talk a little bit more about all of these things that affect Knox County.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.